Think about the last time you let someone walk all over you just to avoid an awkward conversation. Maybe it was a boss dumping extra work on your desk at 5 p.m. on a Friday, or a partner making a decision without asking you, or even just a barista getting your order wrong and you drinking it anyway because you didn't want to be that person. There's a very specific, humiliating sting that comes with staying silent. You tell yourself you are just being chill or keeping the peace, but deep down, you feel small. On the flip side, we all know the regret of exploding, finally snapping, saying too much, and watching the other person shut down completely. It's this paralyzing trap that most of us live in every single day. We think we have to choose between being liked and getting what we actually want. It feels like you can either be a pushover who is secretly resentful, or a jerk who gets their way but eats lunch alone. That fear of conflict isn't just about the argument itself. It's the fear of damaging the relationship, of being judged, or of hearing the word no and feeling like a failure. It's exhausting to constantly calculate every word, wondering if standing up for yourself is worth the risk of a fight. This audio experience is your permission slip to stop playing that game entirely. We aren't going to talk about manipulating people or learning aggressive power moves that make you feel fake. Instead, we are going to unpack a method that changes the geometry of the conversation. It is about realizing that you don't have to defeat the person across from you. You need to defeat the problem that is standing between you. We are going to learn how to separate your ego from the issue so you can be tough on the situation while remaining respectful and connected to the human being in front of you. This is about walking into a tense room with your heart rate steady, knowing you can advocate for yourself without burning the bridge. So let's shake off that anxiety. Stop replaying old arguments in the shower and look at the first major mistake that traps us every time. Chapter 1. The Trap of the Trench War. Most of us have been taught to negotiate like we are digging trenches in a war zone. You take a position, I take a position, and then we just throw rocks at each other until one of us gives up or we meet somewhere miserable in the middle. Think about the most basic argument, deciding where to go for dinner. You say you want tacos. Your partner says they want pizza. You say, "We had pizza last week." They say, "Well, I had tacos for lunch." You dig in, they dig in. Suddenly, it's not about food anymore. It's a battle of wills. You start arguing about who drives more, who picks the movies, and who compromises more in the relationship. By the time you agree on a mediocre burger place that neither of you wanted, the night is ruined, and you are eating in silence. This is what we call positional bargaining, and it is the quickest way to kill a connection while solving absolutely nothing. We lock ourselves into these rigid stances because our egos get involved. If I back down from tacos, it feels like I'm losing status, like I'm admitting defeat. So we fight for the position rather than looking for what actually matters. The problem with this trench warfare approach is that it forces you to choose between the relationship and the result. If you are soft and give in to keep the peace, you feel used. If you are hard and demand your way, you damage the trust. But there is a massive blind spot here that we often miss in the heat of the moment. We assume that because our positions are opposed, our interests must be opposed too. But usually, they aren't. In the dinner argument, the position was tacos versus pizza, but the underlying interest might have been, I want something spicy versus I want comfort food. If you had stopped digging your trench and looked at the actual human need, you might have realized a spicy curry place would have made you both happy. We waste so much emotional energy defending our arbitrary demands that we forget to ask why we even want them in the first place. This chapter is about climbing out of that trench, putting down the weapons, and realizing that just because you are sitting on opposite sides of the table doesn't mean you are in a fight to the death. It starts by recognizing that focusing on positions is a trap, and the only way out is to change what you are actually talking about. Chapter 2. Human first, problem second. It is incredibly easy to forget that the person standing in your way is actually a human being. When we are deep in the heat of a conflict, when the adrenaline is pumping and our defenses are up, the other person stops looking like a friend, a partner, or a boss. They start looking like a caricature, a stubborn roadblock that exists solely to make your life difficult. You stop seeing their fears, their bad morning, or their insecurity, and you only see their refusal. This is where things get messy. We have a tendency to bundle the person and the problem into one big tangled knot. If someone rejects your idea at a meeting, you don't just think, they don't like the idea. You think, they don't respect me. If your roommate leaves the sink full of dishes again, it isn't just about dirty plates. It feels like a personal attack on your time and your sanity. We take substantive issues, money, chores, deadlines, and we wrap them in layers of ego and emotion until we can't tell the difference between the issue and the relationship. And once that happens, you are no longer solving a problem. You are defending your identity. The hardest truth we have to swallow is that everyone, including the person making your life miserable right now, has a worldview that makes perfect sense to them. In their movie, they are the hero, and you might be the villain. We often fall into the trap of judging our own behavior by our good intentions, while judging their behavior by how badly it impacts us. You know you were late because traffic was a nightmare and you were stressed. They just see you as irresponsible. You know you didn't text back because you were overwhelmed. They see you as cold. To get anywhere, you have to perform a difficult mental shift. You have to separate the person from the problem. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them or even like them in that moment. It means recognizing that you can fight the issue without attacking the human. You can be absolutely relentless about fixing the leaky roof with your landlord, while still being incredibly polite and respectful to the landlord himself. It is a distinction that saves relationships. This requires proactive emotional maintenance. Before you even dive into the logistics of a disagreement, you have to handle the human element. Think of it like diffusing a bomb. You can't just smash it with a hammer. You have to carefully disconnect the wires. This means validation. Most people will not listen to a single word of your logic until they feel heard. It is a deep, primal human need. If someone is shouting or stonewalling, it is usually because they feel their emotions are being dismissed. Instead of countering their anger with your own, try simply acknowledging it. Say something like, "I can see how frustrating this is for you," or "I understand why you feel that way." You aren't admitting you are wrong. You are just admitting that their feelings exist. By treating the person with respect and the problem with rigor, you shift the dynamic. You are no longer two gladiators trying to kill each other. You become two partners standing side by side, looking at the problem on the table and asking, "Okay, how do we solve this thing?" It changes the energy from me versus you to us versus it. Chapter 3. The Hidden Why. Once you have stopped attacking the person and started looking at the situation, you will run into the next wall, the deadlock of positions. We talked about this with the trench warfare. You want $5,000, they offer $2,000. You want to go to the movies, they want to stay home. It seems like a zero-sum game where one person wins and the other loses. But this is an illusion caused by looking at the surface level of what people say they want, their position, rather than digging for what they actually need, their interest. The position is the what, but the interest is the wie tool. And the magic of negotiation happens when you stop arguing about the what and start getting curious about the wie tool. There's a classic story about two people fighting over an orange in a kitchen. They both want the orange. They argue, they shout, and finally, they decide to compromise by cutting it in half. It seems fair. One person takes their half, eats the fruit, and throws away the peel. The other person takes their half, peels it, uses the zest for a cake, and throws away the fruit. If they had just asked why the other person wanted the orange, one could have had all the juice and the other could have had all the peel. They both could have won completely, but because they focused on the position, "I want the orange," they both ended up with less. In your real life, this dynamic is playing out constantly. Behind every rigid demand is a human need, usually involving security, belonging, control, or recognition. Let's say you are negotiating a salary. Your position is a specific number. Your boss's position is a lower number. If you stay there, you just crash into each other. But ask yourself, why do you want that number? Maybe you need to pay off student loans, or maybe you want to feel valued compared to your peers. Now, ask why your boss is saying no. Maybe they have a strict budget cap, or they are worried about setting a precedent for other employees. Once you know the interests, new doors open. If they can't give you the cash, maybe they can give you a better title, more flexible hours, or a guaranteed review in 6 months. These things satisfy your need for recognition and security without breaking their need for budget control. You're no longer fighting over a single number. You are crafting a package that satisfies the hidden hunger underneath. The most powerful tool you have here is curiosity. We are often so scared of looking weak that we stop asking questions. We assume we know why the other person is being difficult. They are greedy, they are selfish, they are clueless. But you have to become a detective of human motivation. Ask, help me understand why this is important to you. Or, what is your biggest concern if we do it my way? You will be shocked at what you hear. Often, the other person's interests aren't even opposite to yours. They're just different. You might care about speed. They might care about quality. You might care about immediate cost. They might care about long-term reputation. These differences aren't barriers. They are the raw material for a solution. By focusing on interests, you move away from a battle of wills where someone has to surrender, and toward a creative process where you build a solution that fits everyone. It stops being about who is stronger and starts being about who is smarter. You realize that you don't have to beat them down to get what you want. You just have to figure out a way to give them what they need while ensuring you get what you need. That is the art of the hidden why. Chapter 4. Creating before deciding. There is a particular kind of paralysis that happens when a decision needs to be made. You're sitting in a room, maybe with your partner trying to plan a vacation or with a business partner trying to save a project, and the air feels thin. You stare at each other, and it feels like the walls are closing in because you believe there is only one pie, and the only question is, who gets the bigger slice? If you take the mountains, they lose the beach. If they get the budget, you lose the staff. This scarcity mindset triggers a deep, primal fear that for you to win, they must lose, which creates a suffocating pressure to find the perfect answer immediately. We tend to censor ourselves in these moments. You have an idea, but you swallow it because a voice in your head whispers, "That's stupid, they'll laugh at that," or "That's too expensive, don't even bring it up." We kill our own creativity before it even takes a breath because we are terrified of judgment. We treat the act of inventing options and the act of deciding on them as the same step, which is like trying to drive a car with your foot slamming the gas and the brake at the exact same time. You don't move forward, you just burn out the engine. The breakthrough comes when you give yourself permission to separate these two distinct processes. First you create, then you decide. You have to carve out a mental sanctuary where judgment is temporarily suspended, a no criticism zone. Imagine sitting down with that difficult person and saying, "For the next 20 minutes, we aren't agreeing to anything. We are just going to throw every single idea, no matter how wild or impossible, onto the table." It feels risky, but it is actually incredibly liberating. When you remove the pressure to commit, the defensive armor drops. You might suggest something ridiculous, and instead of shooting it down, the other person might say, "Well, that won't work, but it gives me an idea about this other thing." Suddenly, you aren't fighting over a single slice of pie, you are baking a bigger pie together. You move from either-or thinking to what-if thinking. This is where the magic of mutual gain lives. In almost every conflict, there are low-cost things you can give that provide high value to the other person, and vice versa. It's about looking for the differences in your preferences. Maybe you care more about the timing of the money, and they care more about the amount. Maybe you want the credit for the work, and they just want the work done. By putting a dozen options on the table before choosing one, you stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You create a menu of possibilities. It transforms the energy from a grim standoff into a collaborative brainstorming session. You aren't enemies hoarding resources. You are architects designing a solution that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. You will find that when people feel they helped build the solution, when they see their own fingerprints on the plan, they are infinitely more likely to say yes and actually stick to it. Chapter 5. The Fairness Filter. Let's talk about that gritty, uncomfortable feeling of being taken advantage of. We have all been there. Maybe you are buying a used car, or negotiating rent with a landlord, or trying to settle a dispute about damages. The conversation turns into a naked battle of wills. They say, "I want $500. You say, "I'll give you $200. They scowl and say, $450. You feel your blood pressure rising because it feels arbitrary, like a playground bullying match where the loudest or most stubborn person wins. This is the haggling trap, and it is exhausting. It damages relationships because every time one person moves their number, it feels like a personal defeat, a loss of face. You dig your heels in, not because the number matters, but because you don't want to feel like a sucker. The fear here is a lack of legitimacy. We are terrified that we are agreeing to something unfair just to get the pain over with. The antidote to this battle of wills is to stop relying on what you want or what they want and start relying on what is fair. This is the concept of using objective criteria. It is like bringing a shield of logic into an emotional sword fight. Instead of just demanding a raise because I want it, you bring the industry standard salary data for your position in your city. Now, you aren't asking your boss to bow to your will. You are asking them to bow to the market reality. It depersonalizes the conflict completely. If you are arguing with a contractor about a bill, don't just get angry about the price. Pull up the original quote, look at the cost of materials and say, I want to pay you what is fair. Can you explain how this number aligns with the standard rates? Suddenly, you aren't attacking their integrity. You're just asking for the math to make sense. This approach changes the dynamic from me versus you to us versus the standard. It saves face for everyone. If the other person backs down, they aren't surrendering to you. They are deferring to the facts. It allows them to yield without looking weak, and it protects you too. When you insist on objective criteria, whether that's market value, legal precedent, professional standards, or simply what we did last time, you have a firm place to stand. You can be open to reason, but closed to threats. If they push back with pressure or emotion, you can calmly return to the filter of fairness. I appreciate that you feel that way, but tell me, on what basis is that price calculated? It acts as an anchor in the storm of negotiation, keeping you from drifting into resentment. You sleep better at night knowing you didn't just win a fight, but that you reached an outcome that was legitimately fair. You walk away with your self-respect fully intact, knowing you didn't bully anyone and nobody bullied you. Chapter 6. Your secret safety net. We need to talk about the terrifying feeling of desperation. You know the moment I am talking about, when you are sitting across from a potential employer or a landlord or even a romantic partner, and a cold wave of panic washes over you because you feel like you need this deal to happen. You tell yourself, I cannot afford to lose this job offer, or I have nowhere else to go. That desperation is a scent, and people can smell it on you. It makes you weak. When you feel like you have no other choice, you become willing to accept crumbs just to avoid starving. You lower your standards, you ignore the red flags, and you agree to terms that make your stomach churn because the alternative, walking away into the unknown, feels like stepping off a cliff. We often try to protect ourselves against this by setting a bottom line, a rigid number or condition that we swear we won't go below. But let's be honest. In the heat of the moment, when the pressure is on and the silence is loud, that bottom line usually crumbles. You justify it. You say, well, it's better than nothing. And you end up trapped in an agreement that breeds resentment from day one. The only thing that actually protects you in a high-stakes conversation is not your willpower. It is your alternatives. In negotiation theory, this is called your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. But let's call it your secret safety net. It is the answer to the question, what will I actually do if we don't make a deal? Not what you hope will happen, but what is your concrete executable plan B? If you're negotiating a raise, do you have another job offer in your back pocket, or at least a solid plan to freelance? If you're buying a car, have you already found a similar one at another dealership for a good price? The power you hold in any room is directly tied to how easily you can walk out of that room. If walking away destroys you, you have zero power, no matter how loud you shout. But if you know that walking away simply means switching to a plan B that you are perfectly happy with, you become bulletproof. Building this safety net requires work before you even open your mouth. It means doing the uncomfortable preparation of facing your worst-case scenario and making it better. It means scouring the job market, getting pre-approved for a mortgage elsewhere, or realized you can actually live with your parents for a month if the lease falls through. When you walk into a negotiation with a strong safety net, your energy shifts completely. You stop begging and start choosing. You aren't arrogant, but you are relaxed. You can look the other person in the eye and say, I really want to make this work with you, but I also have this other option that looks pretty good. That is not a threat. It is just reality. It changes the dynamic from a hostage situation to a peer-to-peer conversation. You are no longer fighting for survival. You are simply comparing two possible futures and choosing the one that serves you best. Chapter 7. When David meets Goliath. There is a specific kind of intimidation that happens when you are sitting across from someone who holds all the cards. Maybe it is a massive corporation with a team of lawyers, a wealthy landlord who owns half the city, or a boss who has been in the industry longer than you have been alive. You feel small. You feel like David standing in the shadow of Goliath, holding nothing but a pebble. The instinct in these moments is to either surrender immediately because, what's the point, or to armor up and try to out-tough them, which usually ends with you getting crushed. We look at their money, their status, and their connections, and we assume that power means force. We think that because they are bigger, they win. But this mindset is a trap that keeps us playing their game by their rules, where they're guaranteed to beat you. If you try to match a giant's strength for strength, you will lose every single time. The secret to handling a power imbalance isn't to fight back, it is to refuse to fight at all. We call this negotiation jujitsu. In martial arts, you don't block a heavy blow with your face. You step aside and let the attacker's own momentum throw them off balance. When a powerful opponent attacks your position, don't defend it. When they attack you personally, don't counterattack. Instead, treat every attack as an opportunity to ask a question. If a client says, "Your prices are absurdly high," don't get defensive and start listing your credentials. Instead, channel your curiosity and ask, "What makes you say that? What standard are you comparing it to?" Suddenly, they have to explain themselves. You have shifted the burden of proof back onto them. You are using their energy to fuel the conversation. This approach disarms the Goliath because it breaks the script they are used to. They are used to people cowering or fighting. When you stay calm and ask inviting questions like, "What would you do if you were in my shoes?" or "How does this offer align with the fair market value?" you force them to step down from their pedestal and engage with the problem. You are subtly educating them without preaching. You're inviting them to criticize your ideas, saying, "Correct me if I'm wrong," but which makes them feel powerful while actually guiding them toward your solution. It requires an immense amount of emotional discipline to not snap back when you feel small, but there is a quiet, subversive power in silence. When they throw a hard ultimatum at you, just pause. Let the silence hang in the air. People hate silence. They will often start talking just to fill it, revealing their own weaknesses or making concessions they didn't intend to. You don't need to be bigger than them to win. You just need to be more balanced, refusing to react and relentlessly steering the focus back to the problem until even the giant has to listen. Chapter 8. Reflecting the attack. There is a moment in every difficult conversation that feels like a physical slap. You're trying to be reasonable. You're using all the tools we've talked about, separating the person from the problem, focusing on interests, and suddenly, the other person stops playing fair. They attack you. Maybe they call your integrity into question. Maybe they mock your proposal. Or maybe they just flat out tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. The emotional reaction is instant and volcanic. Your face gets hot, your heart hammers, and your brain screams at you to counterattack. You want to defend yourself, to explain why they are wrong, or to hurt them back. This is the critical juncture where most negotiations fall off a cliff. If you push back against their pressure, you create a collision. It's simple physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If they push and you push back, you are just two people locked in a stalemate, wasting energy and getting nowhere. But what if you decided not to push back at all? This is the core of what we call negotiation jujitsu. When someone attacks you, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to react. Instead of defending your ideas, invite criticism and advice. This sounds counterintuitive, almost like surrender, but it is actually a strategic masterstroke. When they say, "This idea is terrible," resist the urge to say, "No, it's not." Instead, ask, "What specifically concerns you about it?" Or, "What would you do differently in my position?" By doing this, you are reflecting their attack back onto the problem. You are taking the energy they threw at you, their anger, their dismissal, and redirecting it toward the issue you are trying to solve. You are turning them from an opponent into a consultant. You are effectively saying, "Okay, if my idea is bad, help me build a better one." It forces them to stop attacking and start thinking. There is also a profound power in naming the game. Sometimes the attack isn't about the issue. It's a tactic designed to make you uncomfortable. Maybe they are deliberately keeping you waiting, or sitting you in a lower chair, or playing good cop, bad cop. When you sense this is happening, the best defense is to simply bring it into the light. You don't get angry, you just get observant. You say, "I get the feeling there is a strategy here to make me feel a bit off balance." Is that fair to say? When you call out a dirty trick calmly and without accusation, it loses its power instantly. It's like turning the lights on in a dark room. The monster in the corner just turns out to be a pile of clothes. By refusing to be a victim of their tactics and refusing to be an aggressor in return, you break the cycle of escalation. You hold up a mirror that forces them to look at their own behavior, and usually that is enough to shift the conversation back to a place of respect. You prove that you can be firm without being mean, and that is a kind of strength that is impossible to ignore. Conclusion. We have walked a long road together, moving from that familiar, paralyzing fear of conflict to a place of grounded confidence. Think back to where we started. That knot in your stomach, the anxiety of the trench war, and the exhausting belief that you had to choose between being liked and being respected. It is a heavy burden to carry, living your life constantly editing your own voice to keep the peace. But over the course of these chapters, I hope you have felt that weight start to lift. You now possess a set of tools that are not about trickery or manipulation, but about clarity and human connection. You know now that the person across from you is not the enemy. The problem is, you understand that your power doesn't come from being the loudest voice in the room, but from your ability to ask the right questions, to understand the hidden why behind the demand, and to have a safety net that allows you to walk away if you need to. As you step back into your real life, whether that's walking into your office on Monday morning, sitting down for a difficult talk with your partner, or just navigating the daily frictions of the world, remember that this is a practice, not a performance. You don't have to be perfect. You will still feel that flash of anger or that pang of fear. That is human. The difference now is that you don't have to let those emotions drive the car. You can pause, you can breathe, you can choose to step to the side rather than fighting back. You can choose to build a bridge instead of digging a trench. Conflict is inevitable. It is the friction of life. But combat is optional. You have the capacity to turn your toughest disagreements into your strongest relationships. The next time you feel the temperature rising, I want you to trust yourself. Trust that you can be soft on the person and hard on the problem. Trust that there is a solution waiting to be created if you are brave enough to stop fighting and start listening. You are ready for this. If you found value in this journey and want to deepen your understanding of human dynamics and emotional intelligence, I invite you to join me in the next audio experience, where we will explore how to master your internal dialogue before you ever say a word. Until then, keep listening and keep growing.